The destiny of the Fire Nation fell to the prodigal child of the Fire Lord. At least, that is what Azula, princess of the Fire Nation, was told. The young Hellcat gladly accepted the role of being the Fire Nation's savior. To her, it was not just destiny that such an important role was handed to her, it was fate. Zuko, son of Fire Lord Ozai and former Fire Lady, Ursa, was a consistent disappointment to the ways of the Fire Nation. Despite being firstborn, he was exactly the opposite of what a firstborn of a Fire Lord should be. He was always weak, and born with a fool's mind. His firebending in comparison to Azula's was abysmal at best. As a child, Azula herself was a prodigy in such arts, learning to master the more intense concentration needed to control powerful azure flames. And quickly reaching Zuko's level of shame was none other than Admiral Zhao, the lead of the Fire Nation's warships and current military conquests. Azula had met the Admirable before, and to her perspective, he was a worthy and savage man. Exactly what the Fire Nation needed in the times of the Avatar's return. However, as of late he had failed to capture the Avatar on multiple times, even when the supposed Messiah was in arm's length. He had also been apparently outwitted by the Avatar on some occasions, and it didn't help lessen the blow when her father's spies had reported that the current Avatar was merely a child. For his recent string of failures, Ozai had sent out his daughter, his pride and joy, the Fire Nation's prodigy, Princess Azula, to assist Admiral Zhao on the upcoming date where a majority of the Fire Nation's fleet would assault the Northern Water Tribe as a whole. It was also rumored that the Avatar himself was headed in the same direction, so it would be considered a win-win situation if both the Northern Water Tribe could be conquered with the Avatar dead on the same day. Zhao had recently contacted the Fire Lord, practically pleading for one more chance to prove himself, but Ozai would have none of it. He told Zhao of Azula's impending arrival to his fleet in where she would assist in the assault. Whether or not Zhao took this as a blow to his own ego was yet to be seen, but personally Azula could care less. Whether the Admiral could or couldn't live up to his task was of no concern to her. She simply wished to have the Avatar's head on a pike, courtesy her own strength. As for Zuko, his bending was pathetically average, if not underdeveloped from what Azula could comprehend. The Fire Nation's princess was always willing to make the harder decisions people with soft hearts couldn't make to preserve the sanctity of her nation. Some people called the Fire Princess's methods abominable, others called her mad. But to Azula, she simply thought of herself as incredibly efficient, nothing more and nothing less. The Avatar, the being looked up to as some sort of deity in the eyes of the common folk outside of the Fire Nation, had returned after more than a 100 hiatus. To only a select few hopefuls, the return of such a figure was the sign that the supposed atrocities of Azula's people would be stopped. However, to many, the return of the Avatar was nothing more than an extra burden for the world to carry, considering how the one who had been perceived as a god fled from his role so many years ago. To Azula's nation, the Avatar was the epitome of true weakness. His very existence served as an affront to the Fire Nation and all of its beliefs, teachings and most importantly, rule. Azula had come to hear that this new Avatar held the same bland concepts of those who came before him, that tyrants and oppressors of the people had to be brought down in order for there to be true peace. As she traveled further, Azula could only shake her head at such virtuous idealism. What is peace anyway? Does it even exist? What one person could see as peace could be heresy to another, and what another could see as violence could be seen as peace from another perspective. Therefore, there could never be such a thing as true peace, only one's perception of what peace is. The only way true peace could exist is if every single person on earth saw peace in the same way, and that in itself is a fool's dream. Such absolute coexistence and harmony is impossible. It is within the human nature to draw the blood of their neighbors. And as long as there are fools with their petty idealism in order to bring about peace, such a thing could not exist. The only way to keep any sort of prosperity was with a cold, iron fist. Diplomacies and trust are trivial matters that only petty politicians concern themselves with, and such tactics could only work so far before someone starts to argue about who has more land because of what their great-grandfather did so many years ago or something along that garbage. If the people are ruled through absolute control, there is no chance for idealism, heresy, radicalism or any type of war. They respect and fear those who rule over them too much to rebel, and as for those who would continue to struggle against for useless concerns like morality, They would have to crushed into dust to show the world that revolt against the peace of the people would not be tolerated, no matter the cost. Azula's closest companions, the only two she considered friends in any term, had decided to come along for the raid on the Northern Water Tribe, though one needed a bit more persuasion than the other did. The first of the two was an uppity girl named Tai Li, a rather fetching beauty in clad pink with an incredibly flexible body. Her flexibility was not her only weapon of choice on a battlefield, but the fact that she could block the Kai of a bender in combat to prohibit them from using their talents was an immensely useful ability to have in search of the avatar of all things. In terms of personality, Azula could only shrug, not in despair or anger, but in a bit of a sense of loss. Calling Tai Li an airhead would be a bit of an understatement. Her rash, bubbly unpredictable behavior often put the Fire Nation's princess on the spot to clean up after the acrobat's mess. Azula smirked, trying to come up with a single word that could accurately describe Tai Li. There were none. Nevertheless, though she would never admit to anyone, Azula did enjoy Tai Li's company, not only this mission, but as a friend in general. Then there was Mai, and if there was a single person on the earth who could have a personality exactly opposite to Tai Li's, it was her. Even Azula herself could note that despite how Mai was a close friend, while Tai Li was spastic, bubbly and joyful, Mai was uninterested, moody and actually quite depressing. Mai, like Tai Li, was a rather attractive young woman, something Azula admired and hated at the same time, as the prodigy child never looked at herself as beautiful or had people ogle her like Tai Li. From what Azula had gathered, Mai had once shared a relationship with her cowardly brother Zuko. But where those emotions would be now were yet to be revealed. Reports on the Avatar's location were shoddy at best, since the living deity was always on the move, apparently trying to master the elements of water, earth and fire, since the last air nomad had only previously mastered his own element due to his act of cowardice. Azula, on the other hand, was starting to grow rather impatient. She wanted to see this Avatar, and face him mortal combat. It was her destiny to strike the impertinent Messiah, to show him that even deities can be killed and how weak the idealism of the Avatars truly is. But as every second passed, she knew he could keep getting farther and farther away. It was absolutely infuriating. Every time a barely thrown together report reached her and revealed the Avatar's location, he was either somewhere else entirely, just passed through the set area, or had left there days ago. Azula, when are we going to get to the fleet? I'm starting to get bored. Tai Li huffed, blowing some of her hazel hair out of her face. Rolling her eyes, Azula looked over to her uppity acrobat, who truly did look uninterested in the constant travel. Not that she would blame her, of course. It had been 3 days since their initial departure, which was more or less a wild saber-toothed moose lion chase, due to the Avatar's consistent travel much like their own. While Tai Li pouted in boredom, Mai sighed audibly at the situation at hand. Sure, it was nice to get out of a castle filled with nothing but people who would give her anything she wanted without earning it and having her ass practically wiped by the nobles. She had to admit the trip was getting somewhat dull because of little to no action. She hated her home and what it represented, and figured a trip to go hunt down the Avatar was as good of a reason to leave as ever. She didn't regret her decision to go chase after such a being, but she didn't want to have to just sit down while being carried all the way to her destination either. To Mai it was too much like home. Suddenly, the carriage came to a halt, nearly knocking Tai Li off balance at the sudden stop. Azula's glance merely shifted to the motion ahead. A few scouts she had sent out farther in the distance for reconnaissance had apparently returned from their mission. She looked at the captain and examined his features. He and his men had obviously hurried back as fast as they could, given their heavy panting and vast amount of sweating. Another examination threw even a fool's eyes that he had obviously found something unexpected, given away by his wide eyes and the flustered look on his face. This delay had better be important, Captain. I trust you coming bearing news about the Avatar? Azula sneered, in which the grimacing officer could shake his head slowly at, which caused the prodigy child's sneer to turn into a menacing glare. My princess. We have not come our relaying information on the Avatar, but my TT troops and I have found ruins of unknown origin northwest along this path. The captain exclaimed in fear, hoping that even minimal justification could somehow spare him from the wrath of the Fire Lord's daughter. You delay my expedition to hunt down the Avatar because of ruins? Relics of the past? I am not a historian, Captain. Though I am interested into what you meant by unknown origin. Speak now or hold your tongue, it matters not to me. Azula practically growled, causing Ty Lee to giggle and a smirk to make its way across Mai's face. One thing the two friends of the Fire Nation princess would agree on is that it was occasionally funny to see Azula scare the piss out of people. Swallowing a lump in his throat with utmost fear, the captain cleared his throat to address his superior. Ahem. The constructs and design of this ruin are a complete enigma to me, Your Highness. At first I thought the caverns could perhaps Kyoshi warriors waiting to assault us. Or perhaps the Avatar himself and his party could have set up base camp in there, but I was wrong. There are markings all over the walls. It's some kind of strange language apparently long abandoned. None of the symbols seem to match any common literacy of the four nations. The captain exclaimed, earning an apparent interest from Azula as she haughtily ed an eyebrow. Some of my men decided to stay behind to examine the walls and investigate deeper into the ruin, though I have some to confess, Your Highness. The ruin, it feels off, somehow. I don't know how or why, but it's like the moment you step foot in there it's like something is watching you, and waiting like a predator in the darkness. The captain shuddered, a rippling chill being dragged down his spine like a rusty dagger. For the lowly soldier, even talking about such a place after visiting it seemed to bring about some type of unknown presence that was undoubtedly listening. Azula stroked her chin lightly in curiosity, while being watched very carefully by her equally curious companions. Azula, Ty Lee questioned, wondering whether or not venturing into such a described area was truly wise, despite her own want to know what lurked in the shadows for better or for worse. We're going in, Captain, you have your orders. Azula stated, a concentrated look adorning her royal face. The captain merely saluted and told the men to move out, and the armored carriage began moving at its infernal pace once more to the supposed abyss. As they began nearing their destination after at least 10 minutes had passed, Azula began to grow anxious for what she would discover. If there is truly something within this ruin that can prove of use to me or the Fire Nation in itself, then I must seize it. The nature of what lies inside does not sound like a relic of the Avatars, however. Then again that depends on whether or not the captain was truly accurate. If there is indeed an ancient weapon that can assist my kingdom in this bothersome war then that's fine by me, if not then I can just strip the captain of his position for such a trivial excavation. Azula's thoughts were her own, but she knew if there was something in these ruins that could help fight the Avatar her father would have wanted her to use it. Another sudden halt signaled that the group had arrived at their destination. Hopping out of the tank, the female trio looked upon what did in fact appear to be ancient ruins of some sort. A few lonesome pillars of unknown agriculture barely stood 5 feet of the ground, looking ready to give way at the slightest touch. A few old houses were hardly visible among the rubble, with faded letters that were unrecognizable before initial decay. A cave pressed against a wall to the north seemed to mark the entry point for the captain's description. There was obviously no lack of subtlety to the entrance. It shouted the words dark and foreboding quite clearly, almost daring anyone to enter. Azula could not deny the presence she felt, however. The captain's words did not do it justice. It was almost like some kind of force on invisible pressure, weighing down on you. Its own sheer power suppressing you through some kind of malevolent, indomitable will. Gazing over at Mai and Ty Lee, the normally broody girl seemed to be on edge whilst the bubbly acrobat seemed generally frightened. With an aggressive huff, Azula motioned for her followers to enter the cave. Departing from the tank, the trio of friends entered what they secretly felt was a bad omen. To a degree, even Azula felt so. She knew that if what the captain said was true, the rest of his men would have already begun their progress into the mysterious darkness. The torches began to illuminate the darkness, and the shadows slithered away from the light with haste, retreating farther down the seemingly endless hall. Azula had been glimpsing both left and right at the walls. They were indeed marked. She didn't recognize the language etched into the earth. Many would have dismissed it as barbaric jargon. The letters didn't seem to match the language the world she knew would be familiar with. Perhaps the age that possessed such writings had departed from the world long ago. The walls themselves seemed to almost be slowly closing in around its visitors, threatening to squeeze the life out of them before they reached their destination. The markings on the wall seemed to move and twirl in the rhythm of some kind of bloody rhapsody under the command of a demonic maestro. Ty Lee pressed her body closer to Azula's, slightly shaking under the pressure she felt. Mai's eyes shooting off in every direction, looking for the slightest notion of movement hiding in the shadows. Maybe it was just instinct to feel such emotions in the dark. All of you have no reason to be so foolishly tense. There is nothing in the dark that wasn't there before. Azula calmly stated, all the while her own eyes trying to scout through the ever-retreating darkness. Ty Lee was practically on top of Azula now, holding her arm tightly as they continued on. Why doesn't that bring me any more comfort? Mai whispered under her breath, confident that Azula heard her. After what seemed like an eternity of walking, the princess and her posse finally reached their destination. Azula came to a sudden halt, having Ty Lee nearly trip over her own 2 feet as a result. Mai and the captain's forces stood next the child prodigy, gaping in awe at the sight before them. The cave had truly brought them underground, as they stood at least 50 feet above where a rather large opening took shelter, while to their left was an ancient walkway down that would guarantee safe passage. The lights of torches were visible down below, illuminating the rest of the captain's men. As Azula's group formed a straight line to walk in an orderly fashion to walk down the long line of stairs, each one of them looked upon their surroundings in awe. The area that they now took refuge in was of no ordinary design. The odds of there being such a reclusive, spacious area underground seemed incredibly unlikely. If there was any doubt that the area was made from human origin, an enormous metal door bearing an ancient symbol of the unnamed language undermined such thoughts. This is incredible. A door of this size would only be built to conceal something massive and potentially dangerous. This begs the question, however, who would go to such lengths to conceal such a mystery? Perhaps the language on the walls told travelers of those ancient times of what they were approaching, or to stay away. Whatever is behind this door must be of great splendor if people were willing to go to such lengths to conceal it. I can only fathom the amount of effort needed to make such an entrance. The metal looks incredibly durable yet ancient at the same time. There appears to be some rust here and there, but nothing detailing an actual structural weakness. Which is very peculiar if the race that built died off so many years ago that the people of this time would not even recognize their language. What lies beyond this door? Treasures? Riches? Wisdom? Ancient weapons? The keys to a greater power? Whatever it is, the Fire Nation will have it. It is our right to claim any powers necessary to secure the future of this world. With those final thoughts, Azula readied herself as she descended from the final step needed to reach the bottom area, more than a glint of determination on her face. She approached the rest of the captain's forces, while the commander of the reconnaissance team gathered all of his troops tenfold to access the situation. Ty Lee and Mai approached Azula, who was gazing up at the massive iron entrance, her index finger rubbing across her chin in wonder. Azula, are we going to? Ty Lee inquired carefully, not wanting to offend her closest friend. Turning her head nonchalantly, Azula merely nodded. Mai bared the same expression on her face that Ty Lee's expressed, uncertainty. Are you sure, Azula? The symbol on the door kind of seems to shout, keep out. Ty Lee timidly suggested, motioning quotations with her fingers towards the words, keep, and, out. Azula's golden eyes would not have any such suggestion though, as her eyebrows quickly slanted in a glare that demanded silence. Letting out a frightened squeak, Ty Lee quickly hid behind Mai, who merely sighed heavily at such familiar behavior. Your Highness, I've been studying the mark on the door while awaiting your arrival. It, just like everything else in this ruin, is completely unrecognizable with our modern language. A logical deduction is that the symbol indicates what's behind this door, but I have no idea what the symbol means since that mark doesn't match a single letter from our nation's vocabulary. The scout quickly exclaimed, a bead of sweat trailing down his neck that Azula would not punish him for his failure. Instead, Azula simply looked at the foreboding door, and started gathering her kai, much to everyone's shock. Your Highness, what are you doing? The captain yelled, fear dragging itself up his spine like a rusty, jagged dagger. Azula merely edged her head with a nonchalant look and smirked. I'm breaking the door down, what does it look like I'm doing? Azula half laughed, gathering her energy to blow down the immense frame. As energies of fire and lightning began to build up inside the princess, a loud rumbling threw everyone but Azula off balance. Matsu. Wait, everyone looked around, unsure of what to make of the unknown voice. It sounded commanding, thunderous and almost regal to a degree, but there was something wrong about it. The voice itself didn't sound completely human, The vocals to its voice seemed to be distorted, and the single word it spoke was unrecognizable. Everyone quickly came to the assumption that whoever or whatever was speaking was using the language of those who came before them, and that language was long since dead. Anata ga tokihanatu dashite iru mano o jitsugan suruka? Do you realize what you are about to unleash? Who are you? I demand you show yourself. Azula exclaimed, frustrated that the person or spirit who was willing to converse with her might not even understand what she's saying, and for the fact that she nor any one of her companions could understand the presence at all. Kono yokyu o shanai yo ni suru koto no nai tachiba ni uru. Anata wa watashi no kotoba ni mimi o katamukurudaro. Watashi wa anata dake ga mimi o katamakiru no ni jubunana kenmena inoru. You are in no position to make demands. You will listen to my words. I only pray you are wise enough to heed them. Watashi wa fasuto, shoshitsu shidamano no gadian. Nani kono doa o koit uru koto wa watashi tachi no kuchiku kandiru kano se ga aramasu. Mata wa watashi tachi no kuseishu. I am Faust, guardian of the lost one. What lies beyond this door could be our destroyer or our messiah. We can't understand a thing you're saying. Azula shouted, only for the voice to soar over hers. Not hearing it or not caring. Kare wa zuto me ni hanaret mipu shita, kare wa toji. Sakai o shippai shita. Kare wa kan. Sakai ga hitsuyona mano kamo shirenai. He was sealed away long ago, he failed the world back then, he might be what the world needs now. Running her fingers through her hair aggravatingly, Azula's annoyance with the voice began to grow through each passing second. She couldn't understand a damn thing the mysterious being was saying, yet alone what it was trying to tell her, but she could understand one thing. The commanding tone of the voice with how it appeared to be addressing her and her own subordinates. One thing was made perfectly clear. This long-winded speech seemed to be nothing more than some type of overblown lecture. A lecture to the child prodigy of Fire Lord Ozai. To the princess of the Fire Nation. Such demeaning tones cast upon her like she was a peasant. To Azula, the mere thought of it was sickening. Whatever this person or thing was trying to tell her was completely hopeless. She couldn't understand the words it continued to spout, and Azula wasn't even half sure that the being understood her, or even acknowledged that she couldn't understand the mysterious language to begin with. Would you please hurry the hell up? Your incessant babbling jargon is giving me a headache. Azula yelled angrily, huffing in a state of building rage. The acrobat and the royal daughter as well as the captain and his recon team still seemed to be on edge, and with good reason. For Tai Li and Mai, their best friend could have possibly just insulted a powerful spirit who could cast divine or infernal judgment upon them at any waking moment. For the captain and his men, all of them were close to having a panic attack that anyone would dare address a spirit in such a foul manner. Even if the person who did so was royalty. The voice seemed to hear Azula's words, as an ominous pause cast a powerful overtone of fear that overtook the spacious chamber. Azula's eyes widened, wondering if she got the attention of the entity, or just happened to seriously piss it off. An almost thunderous creaking sound overtook the room, all eyes focusing on the door before them. The symbol on the door seemed to glow faintly, but then whatever light it held vanished in an instant. The entrance to the unknown was starting to open, the sound of ancient metal scraping against itself in order to make such a feat possible. When the door had finally opened completely, the visibility of what was inside yielded no results. It was as dark and as foreboding as the rest of the cave. The darkness seemed to be calling out to Azula, wanting her, needing her to come forward. Taking a deep breath, Azula summoned her azure flames to her hand in order to secure more light against the darkness. As the princess moved forward, her friends and her subordinates followed cautiously. Sweat beads were dribbling down Mai's face. Tai Li looked like she was going to pass out at any moment, and the captain and his unit were about ready to fall back and abandon the operation entirely. Azula half expected the enormous gate to close as soon as they entered the room, the cliché of many of novels pertaining to grim tales she had read back in the royal library of her wealthy home. Such a thing did not happen, but the air seemed to grow ever colder, until it seemed there was no air at all. The noises, the echoes of which all who entered had heard before, stopped. Now there was only silence, and it boded grim for all those who entered. For a few moments, there was nothing but complete darkness. Azula's piercing golden eyes could not see through the blackness that surrounded her, nor could her friends do the same. Suddenly, a blinding flash illuminated the middle section of the room, forcing Azula's party to cover their eyes to adjust to the sudden blinding light. While everyone's retinas cooled down from the sudden burst of light, a new sense almost instantly overwhelmed Azula's party, including the child prodigy herself. The light that had been projected began to show off what it had in store for the group. Needless to say, everyone's eyes widened, with an included gasp from Tai Li. The pillar of light that blinded everyone just seconds ago had apparently revealed what the massive gate was trying to conceal. Though much to Azula's surprise, it wasn't what she was suspecting in the least. 25 feet above them at least, suspended through chains piercing through his skin, appeared to be a young man in his early 20s. The method in which he was held seemed incredibly brutal, to which Azula smiled. Maybe the world that came before hers was good for more than she thought. The chains had pierced multiple sections of the man's body, including the ankles, elbows, hands, legs, kneecaps, collarbone, shoulder bones, chest, back, and even each area in between each rib bone. The man bore a strange outfit, a pair of worn-out charcoal black sandals somehow still adorned to his feet, as a red flowing garment that acted as a lower cloak-like substance attached to his waist with torn gray pants stained with blood. His eyes remained closed, so one could only speculate at what the color once was. Covering his forehead was some sort of metallic headband, which must have been made from some sort of light metal in order not to weigh him down. And just like all the other things she had seen from this ruin, a strange symbol was etched into the middle of the headband itself. Some kind of royal necklace was wrapped around his neck, a flat sliver slab of metal dangling from the black thread that held it in place. Inside of the metal lay a small spherical gem of some sort. It gleamed beautifully in the light. The magnificence of the jewel portrayed itself in a rainbow-esque light. Such a fine piece of jewelry must have belonged to a high-ranking royal family of some sort. Or perhaps it was an important relic to ancient firebenders long past. Either way, the mint condition of the artifact itself as well its minuscule size, opulence and color deemed it priceless. His face itself carried a certain stern, yet sensible look to it. Though, the fact that the man before her was obviously dead derailed any sense of getting a feeling for a personality that had long since passed. A distinguishable trait on his face was a large, painful-looking scar that tracked down from the top of his right eyebrow all the way down to his lower jaw, passing a section of his lips on the way. The cut appeared to be abnormal, as if it was darkened somehow. In comparison, it looked like a darker shade of red than the scar that bore itself on the face of her brother Zuko, of whom she had just recently had an encounter with. Finally, a rather odd feature gave the last distinctive touch noticeable. It almost looked like the man had whiskers of some sort, like the kind some sort of wild feral creature would have. On one hand, anyone would notice that was incredibly well toned for his age. Muscles rippling from his legs, arms, forearms and pectorals, but not as ridiculous in comparison with the tales Azula had read about the Earth Kingdom's arena fighters. A more than admirable six-pack made his body ever more impressive, while a strangely alluring tattoo complete with swirling designs made itself perfectly clear on his stomach. The strange symbols of the dead language swirling around the spirals themselves added to his mystique. The only type of formal upper clothing he seemed to be wearing was an open, tattered black cloak that had obviously seen its share of battle. The condition of the cloak, while scattered and flowing, had multiple rips within its seams and had suffered heavy damage from whatever battles it had went through. What could have been vibrantly colored flames reaching scattered through the bottom of the cloak were now nothing but shade of dimmed red, a shallow reflection of possible former glory. His forearms up to the starting point of each finger were wrapped in a white bandage of some sort. A closer look would reveal they were stained red, evidently from blood. Whether or not the blood on his hands were the man's own or the blood of others was up for speculation. To anyone of her world, Azula would note the one thing that would draw any eye-noting passers-by: his hair. It was of an unusual color, and even that was an understatement in comparison what she and her friends bore their eyes on now. His hair almost seemed to glow in the sun, spiky shining gold locks trenched from just his headband all the way down to his tailbone. In the earlier strands of his golden mane were about 3 to 5 long strands of crimson red, adding even more flair to his composure. Amazingly, it seemed like the hair itself hadn't fallen out or even aged a bit since the day of whenever the lad was imprisoned. How was that possible? Azula began to think about the corpse before her. It was admittedly impressive in physical appearance, but that alone was troubling. If the marks on the walls and on the door were so old that none of the Fire Nation's scrolls could decipher them or even bring any familiarity of where they came from to the floor, how could this boy, who was most likely from the same time, be in such prime condition? The symbols had to be at least centuries old or possibly even more so if none of the oldest Fire Nation texts and alphabet didn't recognize them. But by such a time nothing should have remained of a prisoner of war or of any type of prisoner for that matter. After a few moments of cupping their chins in wonder and in suspicion, someone finally decided to break the silence. "Well, he's quite the looker, isn't he?" Tai Li invoked in a flirtatious manner, almost immediately earning blank stares from the entire group. Scratching the back of her head nervously, the pink acrobat desperately tried to think of an excuse to escape the awkward moment. "Ya no, if he wasn't dead?" Tai Li anxiously added, earning deep sighs from both Mai and Azula. A creeping feeling seethed out from the shadows once more. The presence of the spirit had returned once more. Azula could feel it, like claws tenderly rubbing themselves over her shoulders. She knew Mai and Tai Li could sense it as well. Even the captain and his men were well aware they were not alone. Invisible eyes had traced their movements the moment they entered the ruin. So, Anata wa kono asiki o kakusu tame ni imi sa reta mano o might kimishida. Anata no mi wa tandoku de no fomu ni motozui mitsumete iru. Sen nen iyo mei ni mi sa readinai. So, you have seen what this ruin was meant to conceal. Your eyes alone have gazed upon his form, which has not been seen for more than a millennium. I grow tired of these games, spirit. Show yourself. If you are to provide my party with riddles of no use, then you are of no use to me. Azula proclaimed, very well fed up with the jargon that the ethereal being continued to spout. A short pause proved the spirit in the least could understand Azula, and for that matter anyone who spoke the basic tongue. Hiyo ni yoku shite, denka. Very well then, your highness. The dust and particles that made themselves present during the illumination of the mysterious youth seemed to be forging themselves as one. The swirling, spiraling motions of a barely visible celestial fusion were taking place. After a moment or two of nearly transparent particles and air forming around one another, a form lay in its place. The captain and his men were first to step back, many gasps and looks of petrifaction forming in their eyes. Azula merely glared at them for their cowardice. Such acts were disgraceful to her nation. Tai Li and Mai seemed on guard. Sweat beads traced down the neck of the elegant acrobat. Before them stood a spirit of some sort, which according to myths and folklore spirits could take any form they wanted, so whether or not what stood before them was the original body or a substitute that had yet to show its inner holiness or demonic presence was debatable. Floating high above the Fire Nation group and right next to the body of the youth was a barely visible ethereal cloak that shone just a tint of sliver. No legs or feet protruded from the bottom of the cloth, but pale blue anorexic arms hung dormant from the sleeves. A hood wrapped over the head of its occupant, and when one looked to see the face of the heavenly being there was quite literally nothing occupying it. The hood was standing as if someone was wearing it, which was all too obvious due to the unnaturally colored arms, but no face of any sort was under the hood. "I am Faust, guardian of the Lost One. You have demanded for me to appear in a physical form, a bold request for a mere human. Nevertheless, your indomitability has assured that your group has made it this far, Azula." Several eyes widened at the mention of Azula's name. For a spirit to address anyone other than a monk personally was quite unordinary. It was completely plausible that the spirit had heard Azula's name while her friends and unit had spoken it whilst in the ruin, but it was still nothing to wave a finger at. "So, you can speak the basic tongue after all. I was afraid I was communicating with a spirit who held his lineage so far back in the past he became nothing but a rambling moron." Azula spat, earning the worried eyes of both her friends and soldiers. "Your vain attempts to insult me are pitiful, but I shall give you credit where credit is due. Your drive to discover the secrets of this place is what allowed you and your entire group to pass through the genjutsu set through this ruin, an impressive feat. The one who cast the technique itself only allowed a person to pass through this cave if they were truly determined to find the danger of this place, no matter the cost." Her eyes gazing upon the spirit intently, Azula took a breath and readied herself to speak once more. "What is genjutsu?" I've never heard of such a thing? Was it invented by my people and lost to the past? Or was it invented by the people whose tongue you speak? Azula stated logically, trying to come to terms on what this spirit was trying to prove. You are correct to assume otherwise, Azula. Your people did not invent genjutsu, the ones who came before did. They invented genjutsu as an illusionary technique to confuse, startle or sometimes even kill their foes. The genjutsu placed on this ruin only lets a person with a strong enough will pass through its corridors without being trapped in a never-ending maze. The fact that your willpower is so strong it managed to allow an entire group of people through is incredibly impressive, even to the ones who came before. Who are these people you continue to speak of? The ones who came before? Who were they? Where did they come from? The Fire Nation princess questioned. Her curiosity now piqued at the thought of a race of people never even documented in the oldest Fire Nation records. The ones who came before existed in an ancient time, more than 1,000 years before your great-grandfather was even born. Their time was long and prosperous, until they were consumed by the worst traits of your species. But such a thing has always occurred in human history. Greed, lust, power, pride, envy, jealousy, hatred, anger, wrath. All these traits doomed the ones who came before, and even the precursors of the ones who came before were destroyed by the very same characteristics. They doomed themselves through treachery and deception. Pride and hatred towards one another escalated to a point where even my spiritual brethren consider it blasphemous. They had peace for a time, and for many a time in fact, but such prosperities only last so long. Humans love to kill, it's as simple as that. It's almost a wanting for your species entirely, to strike down others simply because you have the power to. It's a disturbing, repetitive sequence of events. History will always repeat itself because man itself is simply a far too dangerous animal that never learns from its mistakes. Your race has always been damned from the beginning it breathed its first. Coursing her hand through her hair, Azula shook her head in nonchalance. I didn't come here to speak about philosophy or about how people from more than 1,000 years damned themselves again. I want to know the secrets of this place, and you will tell me. Are you sure you don't wish to know of them? After all, they were your ancestors, foolish or not. At this revelation, the entire group grew silent, even Azula. The thought of gaining information about ancestors so old that they weren't even charted in the oldest records was a goldmine of knowledge. Perhaps the spirit could relay techniques and wisdom of the old times that could be invaluable while hunting down the Avatar. Very well then, spirit, proceed with your tale. As you wish. I am glad that you did not just cast me off as a stray spirit. My kind hardly ever shows a physical representation of our forms to mortals outside of the spirit world. Even you know that. It is done only when necessary or in a dire situation. My presence here is a bit of both. The ones who came before were ancestors of all the nations you lay claim to, earth, water, fire and air. But the time of your people, even hundreds of years back from this point, has degraded the nations of before. There used to be so much more in existence than just the elemental nations. So much has been lost to time, and secrets by the handfuls may be perhaps forever lost to whatever future generations come. Your nation was strong even back in the old times, but it wasn't strong enough. Your nation, and every other nation, including those that weren't even elemental nations, were destroyed by a common foe. This person was not one of your avatars, though. Their order didn't even exist in the old times. Though, perhaps if they did, the odds could have been changed, but that within itself is debatable. A man, one man, destroyed the entire world of the past. Nothing over 2 feet high was left standing. He sought to rule it through absolute, utter control, but he accomplished no such thing. His arrogance to rule over everything among high sent the earth into a downward spiral in which it would take thousands of years to recover from. Gazing over at the corpse of the man, Azula's eyes inquired a question that the spirit already knew the answer to. Shaking his head sternly, the spirit looked at the deceased youth. I know what you're thinking, and no, the man you see before you is not the man I speak of. Quite the opposite, in fact. He's the one who tried to save the world, not damn it. Smirking in a grim fashion, Azula crossed her arms in a bit of pride. I'm guessing he failed? The princess couldn't help but flaunt sarcasm at this point. In a matter of speaking. Even now, you only speak in riddles? You'll have to forgive me about that. We spirits are born naturally cryptic. And we also have the ability to inherit sarcasm as well, Your Highness. The youth before you tried his damnedest to save the world he knew, to save the world of the past. And, as I said before, in a matter of speaking, he did fail. But at the same time he may have well saved the entire world as well as everything and everyone who would come after his time. Unfortunately, that triumph itself turned out to be more of a burden and a curse than a victory at all. Out of all people, he would know, and now he's the only one who does know. You can see as well as I can the marking on his stomach, but you know that is not a symbol of an avatar, or anything remotely close to it. Then what is it, exactly? Don't be coy with me, spirit. I wish to know exactly what I'm dealing with here. Though I doubt it could be much at all, considering I walked all this way to discover a corpse. And even you can see that this body is in perfect condition, quite odd, is it not? That this flesh mound has not reduced to a rancid, decaying skeleton seems far beyond comprehension when over a millennia has passed. I have kept the body in the condition it has been since he was sealed here. It was my directive for being summoned here, after all. I have kept his body as stabilized as the day he was sealed here through the use of consistent spiritual revitalization. Needless to say, the process is exhausting. His body needs to be revitalized once every week, and we've been down here for over 1,000 years. Even a spirit can tire, but I can never die, so the relationship between is purely symbiotic. I have watched over this body to make sure that when someone did finally come, they would be worthy of releasing him from his slumber. So then, I take it you know how to awaken this man from his slumber. I hope you realize that not even I can bring back the dead, even less resurrect a person who's been gone for more than 1,000 years. Speaking of which, you never did tell us what the name of this oh so important character is, did you? Clever girl, I never did tell you. If you want to know his name, then only he can tell you. I'll not derive him the pleasure of introducing himself after being in this state for so long. However, there is a way to bring this one back, though I use that term loosely as he never truly died at all. Azula, Princess of the Fire Nation, are you ready to unleash upon the world the dawn of a new age? I dare, Faust, I'm ready, I am always ready. Brash and fiery, if I recall, he was a lot like that once too. You two may get along just fine, or you might end up trying to kill each other. Smirking at the challenge that beckoned, Azula reined her hands through her hair for composure, cracked her knuckles and flashed a confident look at the faceless spirit before her. Ty Lee and Mai could only wonder if inside the empty hood, Faust's true face was smiling in another dimension. What must I do? The princess asked, finally collected in her decision. You must strike the symbol on his stomach with all your might. You must channel all your will, all your drive, into one attack and one attack only. From what we spirits understand, the strongest essence of fire that those of today can grasp is a singular bolt of lightning. Your form is limited, but it is understandable why you lack the knowledge of greater power. And now, you understand why your people are not as powerful as they could have potentially been, all because of hatred and greed. I must warn you though, as it is my duty to do so. Doing this, as I have said, will forever change this world. Nothing will ever be the same again. Additionally, if you are successful in waking him, those not worthy of witnessing his rebirth will die. Their deaths will only serve to grant him more strength. There was an understandable pause in the group's movements. Everything ceased to be for a moment. The captain and his soldiers backed up ever so slowly, while Azula held her ground out of her pride that commanded it. Mai glanced at Ty Lee, who had neared her closer and closer, almost begging for any kind of reassurance that everything was going to be all right. Consider it done, spirit. I shall play your game, and I even more so I shall prove that those of this nation have not lost their ambition yet. Azula declared proudly, slowly beginning to strike several poses necessary to enhance the flow of Kai from her body into her fingertips. An aura emerged from the pale darkness, azure sparks of sheer power and will coursed began to make themselves present through Azula's hands. The men, whose job was to serve Azula till whatever end that may come, started to bolt towards the door. Even though the massive gate was clearly tightly closed shut, that didn't stop from beating it with their fists, trying to find alternate ways to open it and even striking the door with their weapons. Mai could only glare at their incompetence and cowardice, while Ty Lee stared in awe at the concentration of her friend's rhythms. Azula had heard the footsteps that escalated to running toward the entrance. For the moment, she didn't care. Those who had pledged to serve the Fire Nation and only sought to run and hide when true danger showed itself were of no use to her. She would deal with them later, in the most severe manner possible. The moment was near. Azula had practiced the art of conjuring lightning many times. It was something only the most elite firebenders could master. To her own knowledge, the only firebenders she knew that even had the ability to use lightning in any matter were her treacherous uncle, her father, and herself. Always she had been told by Lo and Li that her bending was almost perfect, with only one hair out of place. For Azula, it was one hair too many. For her, a single follicle that betrayed her stance was a failure. The bolt that needed to be cast here demanded absolute perfection, nothing less but everything more so than what it had been beforehand. Readying herself one last time, Azula prepared to strike with all her might. The pleas of the captain and his troopers she faintly heard, begging her to cease her actions. Pathetic. They wish me to stop. After I have come this far to find something that could very well turn the tide of this war? Spirits never lie, it's not in their nature to do so. And for any living person to summon a spirit to play protector for over a millennium, that action in itself commands power that the people of this world no longer have. If awakening this man truly brings about the dawn of a new age, then it shall be nothing less than the royal blood of the Fire Nation who accomplished that feat. Extending two of her fingers forward, an elegant yet powerful lightning bolt emerged from the tips of Azula's nails. The voltage traced its in a serpentine fashion to the tattoo that marked itself ominously on the youth's stomach. For just a moment, time itself seemed to stop. As expected, the boy's body convulsed after being struck with such a surge of energy. As a result, the spasms that his body continued to endure forcefully opened his eyes, illuminated by an azure flash of light due to Azula's technique. After what seemed like forever, but in reality only more than a few moments had passed, there was only silence. Everyone had fallen deathly quiet, waiting for something of providence or damnation to occur. Even Azula stood ready. She had tried to make sure her one attack was nothing less than perfect. But her admirable effort aside, one hair still stood out of place. Azula cursed herself in silence. Her attack still hadn't been perfect. Even after all that concentration, all the preparation needed to deliver one absolute strike, wasted. For a few seconds, nothing of any said mysticism declared by Faust happened in any manner. There was no resurrection of a long-dead corpse, nor the rebirth of a god-like being who could challenge the Avatar. Or who could perhaps overcome 100 avatars tenfold. Before Azula could curse aloud at her botched attempt at resurrecting some sort of devil god, a barely noticeable but foreboding rumble came forth. All eyes focused on the figure that dangled precariously high above them. The rumble began to creep from its barely audible whisper to a much more commanding tone. The room began to shake as if an angry god had been awoken from its long slumber, and perhaps the entire ruin was feeling the fury that accompanied the earthquake before it. The guards and their captain began banging on the door, their panic rising in a desperate bid for freedom. They would find none. Partial segments of the roof of the large room began dislodging themselves, only to be shot down by Azula's flames if they neared her or the two she considered her friends. Not all could be shot down, of course. Pieces of ancient stone began to litter the floor in piles. At this rate we'll be buried alive. If that damnable spirit was lying to me, then more the fool I. Azula cursed her luck, and she promised to herself she would continue to do more so if some ragtime, foolish venture such as this one would be the end of her life as well as her friends. Death, however, decided to temporarily postpone its illustrious services to those in peril. A phenomenal mercy many are rarely given. The tremors stopped, any and all movement ceased. The consistent rattling of the tormented prisoner's chains stopped, and all eyes once more fell upon him. A look of inquiry shot upon both Mai and Ty Lee's faces, in which an equally confused Azula could not provide them with an answer. Azula cautiously took a few steps forward, wanting to get a closer look to see if anything about the supposed anti-messiah was true. His eyes were once again closed, no longer held captive by Azula's lightning. The spasms that racked his body had all but ceased, not even a hint of an occasional twitch here or there made itself prevalent, until the slightest movement made itself noticeable in his hands. A twitch. From both hands. Azula stepped back slowly, knowing full well that her volt had indeed triggered something, in the least. With another twitch from his wrists, and his fingers slowly moving, the being before the decently sized began to awaken before their eyes. His eyes opened suddenly, a large burst of an illuminating burst of pale red consumed them both. The glowing gaze seemed to be intently studying Azula's group with keen interest, and the eyes themselves seemed to widen a bit when they gazed upon the Fire Nation princess herself. Then, they narrowed calmly, assessing the situation with apparent consideration. The chains that had cruelly attached themselves into the boy's skin began to literally dissolve as the same pale red light that illuminated the man's eyes began to calmly disintegrate his constraints. He began to float in midair almost mystically, like the spirit from before had done when it graced Azula with its presence. The grievous wounds that remained bloody and dry seemed to glow in crimson patches for a few moments, and then they all but disappeared. The flesh that was ripped open and putrid was now smooth and clear as any other normal person's. A lifetime of brutal injuries undone in an instant. Crossing his arms in an X position slowly, Azula readied herself in case the mysterious youth were to initiate an attack of some sort. Though, if the spirit's words were true, then this man had more than enough power to annihilate her single-handedly, tenfold. Azula herself was still hesitant to believe that the being before her was really some sort of devil, messiah or demigod. But after coming so far to reach, his worth must be in the least considerable. Extending both his arms to his sides at a frightening speed, the symbols on his stomach began to glow a dark red. The tension was overbearing, the letters of the dead language didn't seem to exactly relay providence of any sort. If anything, damnation. And that's exactly what would come to those less worthy, as Faust had foresaid. Multiple thin beams of red light burst from the boy's stomach, tearing through the air before them, with an ever-malicious intention to find their targets. Azula, Mai and Ty Lee at this point were already in their combat positions, ready to try and dodge the courses of light at any means necessary. The shot forward towards the group at a frightening pace, as Azula and her friends tensed as the beams drew closer. They surprised to find that the lights made no effort to try to harm them. The lights had already chosen their targets. The rays pierced into the stomachs of all the soldiers that cowered beforehand, the captain included. All of them were lifted into the air, screaming in horrendous agony. There appeared to be no physical damage of any kind done to them, yet the lights had still pierced them through and caused them horrible pain. The lights began to grow brighter, and the screams only grew louder. Ty Lee had covered her ears and dropped to her knees, unused to such dark, intrusive violence. Azula and Mai's eyes began to widen as they realized the horrifying realization of what the beams were doing. Azula's men were literally deteriorating before her eyes, as if time had suddenly decided to take all their remaining life all at once. Their bodies were aging at a dangerous rate, they began to shrivel, and bones of all sorts began to show immense visibility due to a lack of a healthy body and skin. Their hair began to literally evaporate, all their throats began to dry with the decrepit features of age. Their eyes began to lose their focus, growing ever dimmer as the youth was rapidly drained out of them. Within a matter of moments, nearly all the flesh from Azula's men had vanished, and only crumbling corpses remained afloat. Mai covered her mouth in disgust, while Ty Lee cried tears of unimaginable horror and began to vomit out of uncontrollable fear. When the demonic tendrils had apparently retrieved what they sought from the militia, they released their grips, sending the now skeletal bodies still draped with clothing crashing to the floor. Instead of hearing the sickening sounds of bones breaking against the floor, there were only soft thuds instead. The marrows of each and every bone of every soldier had been absorbed. The impact of falling crushed what little bone marrow there was left to dust. The lights retreated to their host, who now began to slowly descend towards the floor below him. The three girls turned their heads to the being that just upon his rebirth had killed over 10 men, and in an incredibly horrifying way to boot. The balls of his feet were the first thing to reach the ground below him, and the rest of his body followed shortly. A faint but immensely powerful presence could be felt as the youth's feet finally met the ground. The illumination that clouded his eyes had faded, revealing their true colors after so many years of blackness. As expected, the disfiguring scar that had bore itself on the man's face had rendered his vision in his right eye useless. A dull, pale green replaced the vibrancy of what was once an azure blue, as evidenced by the color of his left eye. The strange youth took a moment to come to terms with his awakening, blinking a few times and stretching out his tense muscles while surveying his surroundings. His vision halted when he saw Azula and her group. His one good eye squinted a bit to observe them, studying them almost. Azula herself refused to be intimidated by the released prisoner, no matter how powerful he was in the tales that the spirit had woven for her and her team. Her fierce glare accompanied by her piercing golden eyes would have made any man cower in fear or in the least stand down, but not this one. The boy seemed amused by her refusal to show any sign of weakness. Instead of a sign of submission, he merely smirked instead, revealing some of his teeth to be of unusual sharpness. He didn't know how much had passed since being sealed, but to him, it didn't matter. All that mattered now was that what stood in front of him was a challenge of a new world on the horizon. He knew that just by the looks on their faces that his time, his world, had passed on long ago, and he still knew he was to blame for it. But it didn't matter now. All that mattered to him now was not creating another apocalypse. What stood before him was chance to begin anew, in a world that he didn't know and in a world that most certainly didn't know him. This was a chance to make everything right, to make everything like it should have been in the first place. And he'd be damned if he missed the opportunity to fix what he broke. Clearing his voice with a rusty cough emanating from a dusty windpipe, the youth looked upon the three young women in front of him. Things were about to get interesting again, that was for certain. Even though groggy and somewhat disoriented, he was sure he was still in his home country. And if that was still so, he'd have a lot of work to do. Where would he start, he wondered? Which land would he restore first? Were his paths still in check? What was the limit to the impure world resurrection technique? How many people could he bring back? And what of his lovers? Could they be returned as well? Restoring his rights of nobility granted upon him by the marriages that were supposed to occur, bringing back his friends and allies, resurrecting all of the lovely ladies whose hearts he captured, getting the current world to recognize the revival and sovereignty of said lands, restoring the Uzumaki clan, checking to see if the Kyuubi no Yoko was still alive, seeing what the future was like, and most importantly, not bringing on the end of the world again. With such an exhausting resume in front of him, Naruto could only shake his head in nonchalance. Things for him especially were never easy, but that's what made it all the more fun in the end. Taking a deep breath, and looking at three ladies in front of him, Naruto could only smirk. As far as he was concerned, a brand new era was about to begin, not only for himself, but for the entire world as well. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, the second Yellow Flash, the child of prophecy, had finally returned. And more importantly, this time he was ready. This time he was prepared. This time, things would be different. Cracking his neck impatiently, the youth groaned as his bones cracked from the ache of time. Even if his body has been taken care of by a spirit, it didn't help the matter that it still felt like he hadn't moved in a few thousand years. Probably because he hadn't. His muscles were sore and wanted to employ their functions again, something he was only too glad to fulfill again. But first, it looked like he'd have to introduce himself to his rescuers. He looked up them for a few moments, pausing on what exactly he should say to the people who freed him. It's not every day a man is freed from a slumber lasting more than 2,000 years, and a thank you would seem like quite a tame gift to offer them. He'd answer their questions, of course, and if there was a better way to repay them, why not? It's not like he didn't have anything better to do anyway. Besides, strolling around a changed countryside that used to be his home would most likely be an interesting experience anyway. So, after so long, I have been awakened at long last, freed from the chains that bound me. You, the one in red. You're the one been the instrument of my revival, are you not? I can sense that you are the one who has freed me. I need not guess if one of your companions did. You have that look upon you that demands respect. The blonde spoke firmly, knowing full well of where he was and how he got there. Much to the mystery of Azula and her friends. I can only assume Faust informed you of whom and what I am before you decided to tempt fate and release me. I can't sense his presence in this realm anymore. He must have returned to the spirit world. I truly can't blame him for doing so. I have no doubt at least 2 centuries have passed and it must have been very dull for him to be the source of my constant revitalization. Taking a deep breath of what little air could be found, the man ran his finger through his long hair and chuckled a bit. Would it be wrong of me to assume Faust never actually gave my name away in his little tirade? He was always so cryptic, but what can you expect from spirits? They exist in an entirely different realm from us humans, and as such can't be expected to give a direct answer to us lowly creatures. Though, I am far more beast than human anymore. The will of a spirit like him playing guardian for so long proves that I am just a very important animal that in need of supervision." The man chuckled grimly, arching an eyebrow of Azula's in apparent curiosity. "The manner in which you address yourself seems a little bit unbecoming of a person who was made out to be so powerful by a spirit of all things. If you are truly as described, you'd think someone so powerful would have had a more royal view of himself." Azula commented dryly, earning a rough chuckle from the blonde. "Oh, and what tales has Faust wove to you and your friends, I wonder? That I was the messiah of my time? That I was the devil incarnate? Or perhaps some kind of tragic hero of demigod status? Such things are so cliché. I prefer to deviate from such tales. If anything, I am only a stranger to this world and the next, nothing more, nothing less." The blonde stated, more than a bit of a cryptic sense evident in his tone. "I see being around a spirit for so long has affected you more than you realize. You talk in the same manner as well?" The princess inquired, in which the youth merely smirked. "If anything, I gained that little quirk from traveling the world so long after Madara damned it. When you're the only person of a free mind in the entire world, there is so much you can learn. Especially when considering that everyone else is literally unable to voice their own opinions." The youth stated rather darkly, earning a curious stare from all three ladies before him. "Madara? Is that a person of any relevance I should know about?" Azula commented curiously, earning a much more intensified stare from the cryptic blonde. "A name that belonged to a man who lived in a world which is long since gone. And much like that world, his name has lost all significance it once held. Do not fret, you'll eventually hear that tale in due time, my Haim." The man smiled, earning an even more interested look from the Fire Princess. He began cracking all of his stiff joints and bones, earning flinching glances from Ty Lee and Mai. At one point it looked the man was going to bend his skull frame in a complete 360, but he stopped right before reaching that point and let his neck zip sickeningly back into place with a disturbing crunching sound accommodating it. "You never actually did tell me your name, stranger. My party and I have deviated from locating the avatar for this little misadventure, so you damned well better be worth all the things the spirit claimed you to be. And what the hell does Haim mean? Is that another word from your dead language?" Azula gruffly stated, her patience starting to wear thin of all the riddles and constant avoidance of question she had endured from entering such a dank cave. Sighing heavily, the blonde shut his eyes for a moment and then opened them, accompanied by a rather wise smirk at the same time. "My name is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, but you can just call me Naruto if you prefer. It's much easier to remember, I'm sure. I see so much time has passed that a mere suffix from my time is considered to be a mystery to you people. Haim means princess, in either admiration or as a title. You are a princess, aren't you? And if memory serves correct, the country that I once called my home was Hai no Kuni, the land of fire. Has that changed as well?" Naruto solemnly asked, fearing that so much time had passed that none of the world he knew even existed anymore. Azula's eyes widened at the blonde's statement, that he was a resident of her land from the times of old. Your homeland was somewhere in the Fire Nation? This certainly changes things, considering if what the spirit said was true, this could change every textbook in history. If such an ancient time were to have existed that is so far lost to my people that our oldest records have no mention its existence, then you are quite literally a living monument dedicated to Fire Nation history beyond the time of my great-grandfather, Fire Lord Sozin. Azula proclaimed, obviously enthralled with the idea of unknown knowledge and power being brought to the foot of her father and to her nation itself. Ty Lee and Mai looked at each other in something short of bewilderment, surprised at Azula's newfound burst of enthusiasm regarding history of all things. This is nothing short of a monumental discovery, and even that in itself is an understatement. If this man really did manage to save the world from complete damnation from the man known as Madara, he may as well be a precursor to the avatars, who didn't even exist in his time. I only pray that he does not suffer the simple-minded foolishness like the avatars, otherwise this venture may as well be a complete waste. All this power emanating from him, how many secrets does he hold? He could teach us the ancient fighting styles of the Fire Nation, and even beyond that I'm willing to bet. If he truly is what the spirit made him out to be, he could improve our chances of winning the war against the other nations. Perhaps even against the Avatar. But there is the matter if he's even willing to help the Fire Nation at all. He may not feel the same loyalty to this nation as he once did. And if he decides to side with the Avatar and the other nations, it would be a considerable loss to lose such a powerful ally. And it would be an even further setback to gain such a powerful enemy. I only wish the spirit was more direct in his meanings to the titles he gave this man. In one version he makes him out to be an ancient messiah of the Fire Nation, and in another tale he's the one who brought upon an apocalypse that very well near damned the world as a whole. But this man, Naruto, claims that this other man named Madara was the harbinger behind the supposed end of the world so long ago. So which is it? Is Naruto a messiah preceding the order of the avatars, or is he some kind of catastrophic monster who ended up destroying the entire world? Or does the former title belong to this Madara person, who Naruto seems to view with spite? It's all a matter of conversing with him about it. If I can get him to ally himself with this first, of course. I have so many questions for you, but first you must answer this one in the least. How did you know I'm a princess? Did the royal seal of the Fire Nation exist even back then? Azula questioned, pointing to her headpiece as evidence of her claim. The blonde enigma looked puzzled for a moment, trying to rattle his brain to retrieve the faded memories he still possessed. For a moment or two, he didn't react to Azula's question at all, earning an arched eyebrow from the impatient princess. It took only a few more seconds for Naruto to recall what was the High no Kuni of the past, and the contents and characters of its people. To him it didn't matter how much time had passed, whatever the land that he now shifted his feet through was presently called, it was still as much his homeland as it was so many years ago. That is the royal seal of High no Kuni royalty. Only those direct to the throne of this land have the right to possess it. It appears my memories are not as faded as they should be. I may owe more credit to Faust than I may have first thought, given the fact he has been constantly rejuvenating my body with his own spiritual powers. This may have kept my memory much more stable than it could have been had I not had a spirit watching over me. A pleasant convenience, if I may say so myself. Naruto smiled brightly, thanking whatever fate for the chance it had given him. Azula, on the other hand, was now reveling in her discovery of finding the ancient golden-haired warrior. So then it's true, my nation has existed from times so ancient that we can't even remember it. I don't know whether to feel thrilled or disappointed. While this is a grand discovery for our people's heritage and perhaps gaining a very powerful ally to the Fire Nation itself as well, I can't help but lament at all the knowledge my homeland has lost over time's cruel passage. If Naruto is truly as powerful as the spirit says, which I doubt to a degree of sensibility, then the ancient styles he possesses are most likely incredibly complex. Perhaps the abilities and attributes needed to attain the skills he knows are not even hereditary in the genes of our people anymore. And if there is any possible chance he could teach me any of the powers he possesses, those skills, if there is any truth to them, could make me even more of a force to be reckoned with. I already know I'm more than a match for this avatar, but having a few unexpected tricks up my sleeves could come in quite handy on this journey. Clearing her throat, Azula gathered her composure and stared intently at the ancient being before her. So, the spirit really was telling the truth, when it comes to how long you've existed anyway. Azula calmly stated, earning a smirk and an arched eyebrow from Naruto. And what's that supposed to imply, Your Highness? Let me take a wild guess. Faust told you some wild tales of how strong I am, didn't he? Spirits really like to brag when a mortal manages to accomplish feats even they deem as impossible. No idea why though. Perhaps it knocks them down a peg to know that a mere mortal can accomplish what any spiritual being would deem as impossible. Naruto chuckled in an honest tone, earning the raised eyebrows of Tai Li and Mai. Rubbing her temple softly, Azula narrowed her eyes ever so slightly at the cryptic youth. Wild tales, huh? With words like those you cast doubt upon me whether or not the spirit was telling the truth, and then you make the comment that you've done things spirits find impossible for mortals to accomplish. Which is it then? Are you as powerful as or even stronger than the Avatar himself? Or are you simply a foolish prisoner, a spirit guarded on a whim? Azula quipped, her patience beginning to reach its peak at so many cryptic statements that had been used against her today. Cracking his neck slightly, a devilish smirk seemed to crawl across Naruto's face. I don't mean to brag, but I do happen to consider myself one of the strongest people I know, and that was before my world fell into darkness, which in turn probably hosted a majority of people that would probably seem Avatar-like to your world today. Plainly speaking, I'm guessing the people of my world are, or were, A whole lot stronger than anyone from the world that currently exists, that world being the one I'm in now. And pardon my curiosity, but what exactly is an avatar? I've never heard of such a person or persons if that is the case. Naruto asked curiously, gaining a small smile from Azula in the process, which made the blonde arch an eyebrow in confusion. An avatar is a being, either male or female, that has appeared many times throughout the history of this world. For centuries they were looked at as living messiahs by the common people. To a degree, some have even seen them as living gods. The avatars of the past, and apparently the present, all have had the recurring trait of being a self-entitled altruistic savior who constantly help people too weak or slow-minded to save themselves. Azula spitefully added, earning a raised eyebrow from Naruto in the process, who was obviously reminded of past events from his own life. Avatars would only rise up when the world as we know it was in supposed peril, and then they would save it as they were destined to. Usually with an incredible amount of finesse due to the fact that an avatar is able to bend all four elements of fire, water, earth and air without the least bit of trouble. However, more than 100 years ago when my people were finally beginning to seize power, the avatar of that time vanished when he was needed most, and the Fire Nation conquered the world without his interference as a result. Azula smirked proudly, having reminded herself about the cowardice of the supposed almighty being she was being sent to chase down. If her failure of a brother couldn't do it, then she would succeed where he and Zhao had failed. Due to the sudden disappearance of the last avatar, the tales of these legendary monks have fallen into depravity and doubt has been instilled within the eyes of the people everywhere. Hardly anyone sees the avatar as a savior anymore, since he ran like a coward when he was needed most. Some people still hold faith in the legend, but those people are rare and are more than often self-entitled fools themselves. I even have it on good authority that the avatar I'm chasing is the same one that fled from his responsibilities so long ago. Now wouldn't that be the most delicious irony? The cowardly messiah trying to have a second go at his so-called destiny. Azula practically chuckled, reveling in the feeling that such a coward would even dare show his face to a world he abandoned out of fear. Much to her companion's surprise and to Azula herself, the mysterious elder youth did not seem impressed with the news that had been delivered to him. If anything, one would dare say he looked to be disappointed of all things. Tilting his head while heavily sighing, Naruto could only feel the true loss of inheritance of what the present world offered him. Really? Only 4 elements? Hey, back in my day while being able to perfectly control 4 elements would no doubt be impressive, but I'm pretty sure that didn't exactly make a person messiah worthy of all things. Naruto practically chuckled, earning raised eyebrows from Mai and Ty Lee and a confused look from Azula. If you mean to infer there are more elements than the ones I've named, I'm afraid you're sadly mistaken. The sacred 4 have always existed, no more and no less. That is what is taught to all of a common mind, but if you mean to imply that there were indeed elements from your time that no longer exist today, for some reason I'm inclined to believe you. Azula stated somewhat haughtily, earning a bit of a challenged look from Naruto. He could only stifle his laughter on what he was about to tell and show to the Fire Princess. Heh, indeed your sacred 4 have always existed, but in truth, anyone from my time would hardly call them sacred. But perhaps that title has only been granted from the loss of knowledge the people of this world have about the elements as a whole. I suspect that an advanced firebender is capable of creating lightning, since lightning within itself is a sub-element of fire and cause it, am I correct? The youthful sage quipped, earning a raised eyebrow from Azula in the process. Lightning can only be mastered by the most advanced of firebenders. Yes, I've come close to perfecting my stance on it as well. But what did you mean that lightning is a sub-element? Azula said calmly, wanting to know more of the knowledge this mysterious blonde was keeping from her. Naruto smirked, barely silencing an audible chuckle. If only the most powerful of firebenders can even begin to harness the element of lightning, then this world has indeed fallen from grace considerably. In my time lighting was considered an element of its own, while possessing the qualities to be deemed a sub-element as well. And to answer your incoming question, a sub-element is an element that can be linked to a true element by sharing its likeness. In my time people had mastered lightning to such a degree that your people would consider truly godlike, or avatar-like, if I may humor you, Haim. Naruto laughed casually, still consistently amused that the messiah of the common world seemed to be little more than a particularly experienced jonin. Nothing to shake a stick at, but hardly worth the title of being crowned a god of all things. After all, besides your sacred four, with lightning I've already mentioned being a completely separate element of its own, there are the elements of sky, darkness and light. And yes, sky does count as a completely separate element from air. Though they are similar, sky is specifically harder to master, but much more powerful. Not to mention all the other sub-elements that can be created by combining the true elements themselves. There's boil, lava, magma, scorching heat, inferno, explosion, sand, dust, metal, ice, wood, crystal, hurricane, storm, gravity, anti-gravity, chaos, order, purity and corruption. Just thinking about all the endless knowledge that this world has lost of its past is making my head hurt. And it's even more troubling to know that a person who can only master 4 out of the 8 elements is to be held in regard as a messiah is just plain depressing. If your world is the future of my world, then I shall do my best to educate it and reform it the way it should have been after the 4th Shinobi World War. Something I wish I'd have been able to do originally. Naruto determinedly stated, a flare of pride evident within his eyes. Mai, who had been silent along with Tai Li as Azula questioned the boy, decided to finally question the boy herself. The world isn't something a person can correct, even if you have the power of 10 avatars or more. From the way you put it, it sounds like you'd want to remake the world in your image. Which in itself seems rather haughty if you ask me. Since when does a person, no matter how strong, get to shape the world as he or she sees fit? Mai commented in a monotone manner, earning a raised eyebrow and smirk from the golden-haired mystery youth. Ah, so my Heim's followers do have tongues of their own after all. I was beginning to wonder if you were both mute since you haven't spoken to me at all so far. And, before I respectfully rebuttal to your frequently asked question, may I at least know your names first? The sage grinningly questioned, earning a somewhat annoyed glance from Mai in the process. She wasn't used to such witty yet powerful behavior. This boy was clearly nothing like the boring politicians and petty royals she was used to being around at her estate. If you must know, my name is Mai, and this is... Hi there, my name's Tai Li. I've got to say, so far you're a really interesting person. You know so much that none of the people of my time do, and you know some combat styles that are practically extinct since I've never heard of them before, and neither has Azula of all people. The only thing that has disturbed me so far is when these red glowing tendrils came out from that tattoo on your stomach, and it's like they twisted and absorbed Azula's men until they were nothing but dust. Tai Li energetically intervened, only to end her long-winded introduction on a much darker, somber note onto what had happened before Naruto's awakening. The circus girl's comment did seem to affect the blonde though. He looked visually troubled from what he had just heard. Sighing loudly in disappointment, Naruto could only shake his head in frustration. So, Kurama needed to literally drain the rest of your men of their life essence in order to revitalize me fully? I thought the constant rejuvenation from a holy spirit like Faust would have been enough to keep my body at its prime condition for however long I've been asleep. But it seems that Kyuubi still needed step in regardless of Faust's actions. Odd though, that he spared anyone in the room to begin with. Maybe he likes you three, but depending on the situation, that could be good or bad. Regardless, you should be lucky to not count yourselves amongst the dead. The radiant teen shrugged in a frustrated manner, recalling all the times his personal demon had commonly fucked him over on both simple and already complicated situations just for the fun of it. So glad to see you remembered that we still share the same body, Gaki. When were you planning to bring me up in this conversation anyway? I've been sitting here idly waiting for you to remember I exist. It isn't exactly easy to get a foothold in this wretched form unless the Jinchuriki actually remembers that the demon exists to begin with. How dare you mention my blood name to a flock of primitive mortals? They're even less capable than the ones from your time. I bet they don't even know the legacy of the Biju. The fox demon finally growled, making its presence well known in Naruto's mind. The blonde only snorted in discomfort, physically unhappy that the monster within him had awakened so soon. It had been less than 15 minutes since his release from his catatonic state, and already what had been a thorn in his side for the majority of his past life had come to haunt his present. You again? I guess it was too much to wish for that when Faust constantly rejuvenated my body over all these years. That you wouldn't reap the same benefits as I? Couldn't you just die already? Or would that have been making things easy for me? Naruto practically spat, earning a confused look from the three girls in front of him, and a resounding chuckle from a certain fox in the process. As much as I'd love to banter with you once more for the 8,000th time, we have matters to attend to. We've finally awoken after Kami knows how long, and the first thing you see when you wake up is three human wenches asking who you are, and you're complaining about a matter as trivial as our bond still remaining? They are nothing but feeble meatbags to me, but I know how strongly you mortals crave to taste the flesh of your counterparts. I swear. You humans can be just as bad as Shukaku was in his youth, and that's saying a lot considering how many little demonic Tanuki children roamed around during that time. The Kyuubi boomed within Naruto's mind, causing the blonde to shake his head in disbelief and frustration until Azula stepped forward to address the situation. Excuse me, but whom in the name of the spirits are you talking to? Is it this Kyuubi being you mentioned just a few moments ago? If so, where is he? I certainly don't see him like I did the other spirit. Azula stated patiently, looking around the giant room in a 360 to see if the spirit was hidden from her vision of range. Naruto sighed heavily, shaking his head at how many times had to explain to people what the Kyuubi was and what the bound between him and the demon exactly was. Well, time to add explanation 9001 to the board. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, or Kurama, which is his true name that he doesn't appreciate being given away to humans, is one of the 9 Biju, a tailed beast in your terms. The tailed beasts have no place in the spirit world, because they're not spirits, they're all demons, as you would call them. Naruto commented casually like he was talking about any other subject, while the eyes of the trio of women in front of him considerably widened. Rolling his eyes from this expected reaction, Naruto sighed once more and held up his arms as a gesture to stay calm. And before all of you freak out, no, not all demons are evil spirits like you've been brought up to believe. But I will admit, there indeed have been demons who have been malicious in nature and have sought to do nothing but try to destroy humans. Though not all demons are like that, some of them just want to be left alone, some want nothing to do with humans due to our violent nature, and others could care less about humans to begin with. Azula shook her in disbelief and looked at the boy questioningly for a moment, with Naruto in response lifting an eyebrow himself. Are you sure you're of sound mind, Naruto? Any normal person usually doesn't consort with demons. Speaking of which, where is the Kyuubi now? As I stated earlier, none of us can see him. Azula stated once more, still wanting to know where the demon exactly was. Shrugging once more, Naruto calmly placed a hand over the tattoo on his stomach. Azula's eyes widened once more, and before she could mutter a word, Naruto nodded once in confirmation. To say that Azula's group was flabbergasted was an understatement. Azula herself had never been put in a place of shock before, but there was a first time for everything. Ty Lee was slack-jawed and Mai's eyes were widened as far as they could go. You and a demon share the same body? How is that even possible? Azula practically yelled, wanting to know how a mortal and an otherworldly being could possibly inhabit the same personal space. Naruto practically chuckled at her reaction. He knew that when a person heard about a Jinchuriki in the area back in his day there would certainly be an upstart, and to say Azula's reaction wasn't normal to what he was used to was an understatement. For starters, we share the same body through the use of a sealing ritual conducted on me by my father when I was an infant. While I have often wondered what would have occurred had he performed the ritual on another child, it is pointless to wish things to be different now. Considering the events I went through in my past life, without the Kyuubi around I would have most likely died much sooner than I would have without him. Naruto calmly spoke, having fully come to terms with being the Kyuubi's vessel more than a millennia ago. I am what my people called a Jinchuriki, a container of one of the 9 Biju. The Biju were, or are, demons whose power far surpasses that of their lesser Oni brethren. My Biju, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, is the strongest amongst all the tailed demons. Before my time however, the Biju were originally all one primordial being called the Jubi, the 10-tailed demon. That monster destroyed nearly the entire world at one point. It was only stopped by the original Rikudo Sennin, the sage of the 6 paths. He even created a massive stone prison that held the physical remains of the Jubi in place, and he threw it into the heavens themselves. That stone is now what we call the moon. Naruto finished explaining, calmly stating what was more than a massive revelation to Azula and her friends. Azula could hardly believe what she was hearing. This boy, this thousands of years old teenager, was single-handedly redefining for her and her friends every common perspective of the modern world to date. If such a claim was indeed true, which Azula was starting to slowly believe due to the fact that not even the most inane madman could come up with such tales, did this mean that by default what gave the waterbenders their strength were the ancient remains of a once godlike demon? Oh, the heresy and outroar there would be if such a claim were made. She could almost physically see the reactions of the common world. The waterbenders might violently react to such a claim, others might believe it, and others would condemn such knowledge. The ones who believed the tale might cast the waterbenders as children and servants of a demon, and publicly ostracize from society itself. Of course there would need to be proof of such an accusation, but Azula was getting a sinking feeling that this youth could indeed prove his story was indeed true. Don't you hate your father for sealing such a monstrosity into you? You weren't even given a choice in the matter. Not only that, but I can only guess that you faced prejudice for carrying this Kyuubi inside of you. Not many people I know would willingly want to be around a man who literally harbors a demon inside him. Azula stated in a matter-of-fact tone, earning a shared stare from both her companions as well as Naruto. The blonde youth sighed heavily, and shook his head in a solitary moment of despair, and then gazed at the Fire Nation princess with a determined look, slightly off-putting Azula's mood. In truth, I originally hated whoever was responsible for sealing Kurama, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, inside my very being. Many if not all of us Jinchuriki suffered prejudice, isolation and even exile in the world that used to exist. The people of my time were not hospitable to us. They did not care about the burdens we suffered, they only saw us the demons we carried. In truth, even thousands of years later I didn't expect the world to ever come to terms with who and what we are. Humans will always find a way to hate and discriminate with that they fear and do not understand, or perhaps they merely wish to not understand it at all. Such ignorance I tried to change at an earlier time in my life. I tried to change the world as a whole. To get everyone to see that we are as truly as human as they were. I learned the hard way that such things in the end are truly not possible. You can only change the minds of a few people within the world. No one can change the world as a whole and no one can or should be allowed to shape it his or her will. Depicting such actions, it is godlike, and it is not within the realms of us mortals to decide. And before you ask, there is a reason why I am so comfortable sharing my secret with you three. Simply because I am not afraid of it anymore. I will not hate you if you despise me for what I hold inside me, but I won't try to change your minds about it if you do indeed hate me. I have seen enough bigotry and malice to know that human beings can't entirely change. Only some of us can push past the barriers that bind our understandings of reality and what we perceive as acceptable. There was a large momentary silence after Naruto's speech. The eyes of the three women seemed to be directly focused on the blonde youth. They seemed to be studying him, reading him, each of them equally intrigued by his words. Such boldness and honesty was little seen in the world they knew of and existed in presently. Naruto's words seemed to radiate determination and respect to a past they unfamiliar of. It was quite clear that the person had awakened was clearly no ordinary person after all. His words alone had made that much perfectly clear. Mai was the first to banish the silence from his speech, clearing her voice adamantly and taking a deep breath afterwards. Naruto's eyes as such concentrated on her, intent to know the first of the three opinions of the new world. Perhaps I've judged you too early. Your confidence seems to have more respect in it than the desire to change everyone as you see fit, it would seem. I apologize that I labeled you as such so early on when we've barely even known each other. I have gotten used to labeling people at my old residence due to their predictability and idiocy. You clearly have more intelligence embedded within you than I let myself believe. And as for your demon and the demons you have spoken of, quite frankly I couldn't care less. Mai calmly explained, earning questioning looks from Azula, Tai Li and Naruto respectively in the process. Before Naruto went to open his mouth, Mai held out one hand to let him know she wasn't done explaining. You're already at peace with the demon inside you, so by that logic, who am I to judge you any further? From the way you've made it sound you've already been through hell due to people's judgment from your past life. I won't make things any harder for you than they have been already. The dark-haired girl calmly quipped, earning a smile Naruto and a full-on glomp from Tai Li for such a sweet statement coming from Mai. To which Mai responded by nonchalantly dropping the jubilant acrobat into the rough soil, earning a small chuckle from Azula. Calmly brushing off dust and grime that had tarnished his skin for so long, Naruto took a heavy sigh and looked amongst the group before him. Perhaps this world wouldn't be so bad after all. A little rough around the edges sure, and certainly quite a bit of effort to return it to its former glory. But it didn't seem nearly as troublesome as the events he had faced in a prior life. If my memory serves me correctly, I'm assuming you'll want to help rebuild this world to its former glory. Kind of pointless if you ask me, Kit. You already fucked up once with Teme, son of a whore. Madara. Though in retrospect you were kind of screwed from certain events set in motion that weren't exactly predictable, but still. Is it really worth it to live up to that damn child of prophecy nonsense that the Rikudo Sennin set forth so long ago? I mean, the man wasn't even that smart, figuratively speaking. By separating the Jubi into 9 pieces he created the Jubi, and half us either hated humanity or wanted nothing more to do with it. Look at me, prime example. I hated humans even before I became who I was through the Jubi being sliced apart. I think it's safe to say my mind was, and is, still quite the prime piece of memory from our former life. You won't be able to dissuade me, Kurama. I failed this world once, and I won't fail again. Besides, even I lose 1,000 times I haven't really failed. I just found 1,000 ways that don't work, that's all. Anata ga zestubo takina, shonen yo. You're hopeless, boy. Osoroku, watashitachi ga okonau koto ga deki, sukunakutomo, miji might wa? Perhaps, but the least we can do is try, right? Besides, weren't you the one who sided with me against Madara at the end, Fox? Which you yourself said was a hopeless effort at the time, yet you tried anyway. You got me there, Kit. So, we gonna revive your clan the old-fashioned way, Kit? Her. Why in the name of the spirits did I know whatever our conversation was about, it would somehow lead to this? You're the one who was complaining about human urges before. Hey, our bodies are connected, you get laid, I get laid. I'd literally be able to feel it. Besides, the last time I got some action was with Matabi, the Nibby, and that was thousands of years ago. Great, so my first, and for that matter, every intimate experience is going to be connected to you? That's just frigging perfect. Can't I do anything without it having to be linked to you? And did you ever have any kids after that incident with the Matabi? No, I'm sterile. Wait, what? You're sterile? Really? Yeah, since I hold the greatest amount of chakra out all of the Jubi, it cancels my body's ability to procreate. Does that mean I'm sterile? No, our bodies aren't connected in that way, Kit. Though you have near unlimited access to my chakra, we aren't the same being though we're so closely connected. Your body is still your body. Besides, Kushina had me within her and she still gave birth to you. Fusing with a Biju doesn't make the Jinchuriki sterile, no matter whether it's male or female. Well, that makes for any interesting deus ex machina. It woulda sucked if I couldn't have kids. So you do want to procreate. I'm so proud. I didn't say now, dumbass. And besides, I don't exactly want to flood the earth with little Narutos. You might have to if you want to restore the Namikaze Uzumaki clan, Kit. I don't even know if the Clan Restoration Act is still in effect anymore. We don't know how much this world has changed. Polygamy on that level might be taboo in this world. I'm sure a few strings can be pulled here and there, considering what resources we left behind and everything we did to prepare for an incidental future like this if our current situation ever occurred, remember, Kit? How could I not remember all of our misadventures I had to undertake to prepare for a dystopian future under your advisement? The shit you made me do nearly got me killed. Oh, you know it was worth it, like when you and the Mizukage nearly. La 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 la. Not listening. La 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 la. That never happened. Oh, you know it almost totally did. You were so close to. If only her guards didn't hear you too, everything would have went on so much smoother. That's enough innuendo for one day, okay? My brain can't take so much imagery. Naruto, are you there? Azula practically yelled, making the golden-haired teen jump out his thoughts and nearly trip over his own 2 feet. Rubbing the back of his head nervously in front of the 3 girls, the Fire Princess could only shake her head in irritation. You drifted off for like 3 minutes, you really just staring off into space. Mai matter-of-factly stated, earning an embarrassed, flustered look from Naruto in the process, who shrugged at having daydreamed away from his present company. Sorry about that, ladies, I was talking with Kurama. the Kyuubi no Kitsune. We were just catching up, I guess. Naruto blushed significantly, remembering a near euphoric instant with the beautiful Mizukage, Terumi Mei. Azula arched an eyebrow at this, while Mai and Ty Lee's eyes widened. Sighing briefly, Azula placed her hands on her hips and accessed what had just happened before her. Wait, you can talk to your demon? And it's not even that big of a deal to you? That all this happens in your head and only you can hear it? The passionate princess quipped, earning a nod from Naruto to affirm her suspicions. Azula just shook her head in disbelief, still not being exactly used to the concept of demons existing within a person's body. Naruto cracked his knuckles in anticipation, wanting to get out of the cave that imprisoned him for so long. So, Azula, would you and your friends like to get out of this hole? We can either walk back the way you came, or we can just instantly get out of here via one of my many talents. Naruto chirped enthusiastically, wanting to test out his abilities and see if he was just as powerful as he was so long ago. I'd prefer the quickest way out of this cave if you please. It was quite a trek down here and one don't exactly want to go through that genjutsu again. Azula said, somewhat annoyed, remembering how much time she had used freeing Naruto from his prison instead of looking for the avatar. Not that her discovery was any less phenomenal, but it certainly used quite a bit of time in the process. Naruto chuckled in response, not at her, but the fact that he was about to show the first people from the new world he had yet to enter things they had never seen before. Stroking a few of the crimson streaks of hair out of his vision, Naruto offered his hand out to Azula as a proposition, earning the eye of the princess as a result. Alright Azula, take my hand. As for Tai-chan, take Azula's free hand, and Mai-chan, do the same for Tai-chan. Naruto instructed casually, earning a look of curiosity from the three lovely ladies. Just what exactly are you planning to get us out here so fast? Ty Lee asked gingerly, earning a small smirk from Naruto that unknowingly made the acrobat blush. That's easy Tai-chan, with the Jikukan Ito art, the space-time migration technique. This technique was developed by that Madara guy the first mentioned, who by now is nothing more than a distant fragment of a past no one remembers. Normally I would use the Hiraishin no Jutsu, the Flying Thunder God technique, which was invented by my father for immediate transportation, but that move is more suited to transporting just one person, and the Jikukan Ito is more suitable for a large number transfer. Naruto explained, with Mai and Azula grasping some of the concepts of what Naruto was saying, with Ty Lee just having a very confused look upon her face. Before we take off, I just want to say that due to the fact that literally none of the people of this time are familiar with these kinds of powers, this may feel a tad strange to all of you. Given that no one has traveled this way in literally thousands of years, you'll probably all feel a bit queasy after this. Naruto warned casually with a smirk evident across his fox-like face. Ty Lee gulped in nervousness, while Mai and Azula just braced themselves for whatever was about to happen. Contemplating in fear for a slight moment, Ty Lee opened her mouth to speak her mind. But it was already too late as Naruto extended one of his hands forward and muttered a single phrase. Jikukan Ito. A sudden visage of the distortion of space had appeared, momentarily shocking the three girls who were joined hand in hand connected to the blonde sage. They didn't have time to be truly surprised, it only lasted a mere second before the transportation occurred. After a total of 3 seconds, the group of 4 was back to the royal carriage, shocking all guards present and causing a few to fall over in surprise and fear. The effects of the technique were as Naruto described. Much to his enjoyment, the three girls were indeed truly bewildered by what happened. Mai was on her knees with her palms against the ground, Ty Lee was struggling to maintain despite her acrobatic training, and Azula hung against the carriage in an attempt to regain her stature. Within moments of when they had arrived, several armed guards surrounded Naruto with spears and swords, much to irritation of Azula and the dismay of her friends. Enough, do not harm him, he is our reward for risking our lives in that ruin. The others are dead, don't ask how, just follow my orders and treat him as our special guest. If any of you attempt to injure, I will personally promise the one who does a lifetime of pain. Azula practically snarled, earning shivers of fear down the spines of the guards and that of her friends, especially Ty Lee. As the guards backed away from Naruto and lowered their weapons, the shinobi couldn't help but smirk in Azula's general direction, earning a cemented glance from the Fire Princess. Your reward, EH? I don't recall myself ever being up for grabs as a prize, nor do I ever remember asking to follow you." Naruto casually commented, earning an increased stare from Azula as Ty Lee and Mai regained their balance. "It doesn't matter what you feel about your stature. You were an ally to the Fire Nation in ancient times. You will do so again. Your servitude to your homeland demands it when it is threatened by war. And I just freed you from a cycle of being bound and chained for at least 2,000 years. You owe me a favor for a favor." Azula commented in a somewhat confrontational tone, having Naruto's smirk disappear and for a look of respect to wash over it. "I indeed must protect my country from any threats that seek to harm it. I will not fail my homeland a second time. And I will admit, I am grateful to you and your friends for freeing me. I knew upon my imprisonment it would be some time before I was discovered and it would take a special person to even reach me to free me. But I didn't expect thousands of years to pass in waiting," Naruto said calmly, taking a deep breath to absorb all that he had to be faced with. "You freed me from my prison, so I will repay a favor for a favor, but I will accomplish in this life what I failed to do in the last as a result. I will restore my clan. I shall bring knowledge to this world of a past they don't remember, and I shall not fail in my duty to protect this land like I did before. However, after this favor has been repaid, what is to stop me from setting off on my own to accomplish my ambitions?" Naruto adamantly stated, earning a smile from Azula while Mai and Ty Lee talked to each other through their eyes. "Nothing, that's what. If you wish to leave after your debt has been repaid, I won't force you to stay within my company. However, consider the benefits of what could happen if you could. Given your stature and your unusual powers, I would assume you were royalty in your past life. With my connections in the Fire Nation I could help you accomplish some of your ambitions. The Fire Nation is still your home, and since you helped defend it so long ago, you're practically a walking monument to ancient heroism. The nation could provide with you financial banking to help build a new province for you. We could try to locate the deeds to what land your families owned. We could even attempt to pull a few string within my government to allow you to have a seat of power in my government, perhaps even amongst current royalty. I'm sure my father would love to meet someone with your kind of power upon our return to the capital if you would continue to accompany us. Perhaps he would recognize your royal blood and grant you back your titles. Maybe he'd even want you to have some seat of power within our family if you're lucky." Azula finished exclaiming, earning a concentrated stare from Naruto and peculiar looks from her two best friends. I've never seen Azula be this nice before. Maybe she just really wants this guy to follow us? I mean, he does seem a bit weird, but weird is good in its own way. Though whatever he did to get us back here made my stomach feel woozy, it sure was a lot faster than trekking through that cave again. And besides, if he's as strong as he says he is, then he'll probably be a great guy to have on our side. Ty Lee casually thought, not really thinking any ill will of either Naruto or Azula. Never seen Azula be kind to anyone other than Ty Lee and her kindness can only stretch so far. She's being a little too nice to this guy. Sure, he seems alright and that one thing he did a moment ago was a bit strange, but she's practically rolling out the red carpet for him. Given how strong he says he is, which I wouldn't be surprised at this point as that's the truth considering all that's been said and done. Azula probably just wants to cover her bases and make sure this guy isn't an enemy in the future. I don't imagine wanting to fight him as an enemy. Mai smirked on the inside, knowing how degrading it must have been for the Fire Princess to be so kind to someone who was still an absolute stranger. I can't lose this chance. The Fire Nation can't afford a threat like this in such a pivotal revolution with the Avatar's uprising. His powers are apparently phenomenal, and from what we just witnessed, that instant transportation was just one of his abilities amongst a possible 1,000 others. We can't afford to have such an enemy filled with secrets and unknown knowledge as the enemy to our nation. It would be a great loss and an even greater failure to have someone who's possibly stronger than the Avatar siding against us. Even if I have to act nicer in order to get him on our side, then so be it. It's a petty sacrifice when it comes to the long run. Such a turn of strength on our side could be invaluable with Zhao's recent surge of failures trying to catch him. The same can be said for Zuzu and that bumbling stooge Iroh. Azula thought to herself, hating to treat anyone with so much respect other than her friends, her father and the custom royalty. Scratching his chin for a long moment, Naruto closed his eyes and casually shrugged at the situation he was presented with. I would greatly appreciate your help as with our homeland in helping me achieve my goals, but that is not why I shall help you, nor is my freedom the reason. I'm going to help you for the reason that if the Avatar truly is like you describe, a self-proclaimed messiah coming to rid the world of all evil, I'm going to prove him that he's wrong. No one person can change the world, and no one person can unite every person across it as each has a separate mindset. Peace can't come with people sitting on their asses while someone else does all the fighting for them. Such sloth and uselessness could eventually once more lead to the downfall of society. The world needs to be shown that it can and must fend for itself, and that they can't place all the fate of everyone alive on one person, no matter how powerful he or she is. I'm one of the strongest people I know, and even I can't do everything alone. I've accepted that. I know that some people can't be changed and sometimes you're forced to do things that seem wrong, but it's doing these things that will guarantee the safety of the future. It's these sacrifices that determine who a person is and that what they're fighting for is worth such a struggle. If I had to sacrifice 100 people to save 1,000 I would. And if the Avatar is sorely concentrated on human life and how to preserve it at all costs, he leaves the world open to danger as a result. He actually acts a lot like I did in my past life. I used to think I could save everyone, that everything rested itself on my shoulders and that I could change everyone's minds, but I was wrong. No one can change the world by themselves. Change comes through unity and alliance, not through sheer power of individuality. It's kind of ironic for me now, that it took an entire lifetime for me to learn these lessons. And now some fool is following the same pattern and making the same mistakes, and that an entire order dedicated to that endless cycle has existed for the past 1,000 years. I fight not to return a favor, not to prove myself worthy, not to restore my clan, not even to prove myself worthy in my own to redeem myself for my failure. I fight for the future and all those who inhabit it, and I shall show them the meaning of power through sacrifice and wisdom. And perhaps someday, the world will be allied in unity and no one will have to place all their hopes and dreams on one person. They'll be able to accomplish their ambitions through their own strength, not through another's. Naruto finished his speech adamantly, earning respectful glances from Mai and Ty Lee, with a look of victory from Azula that this boy would fight by his nation once more. Azula walked towards Naruto calmly and stuck out her hand, earning a perplexed look from her friends, and a smile from Naruto. The two members of royal blood shook each other's hands as a new alliance was cemented in stone, a victory for the Fire Nation. Let us not fail our nation, and let us show the world that it doesn't need to put all of its hopes on one person. Naruto calmly stated, earning an agreeing nod from Azula in the process. As the four teens climbed into the carriage to resume a journey 3 hours delayed, each sat comfortably within her, or in Naruto's case his, corner of the carriage and settled in nicely. The motion of the vehicle resumed again, being led by the remaining guardsmen. All four shared smiles at one another as the resumption of the trip continued, with each member concentrating on their separate task. Ty Lee meditated in one of her acrobat poses. Mai sat calmly once more as boredom overtook her, and Azula seemed to concentrate on Naruto for the past 5 minutes until she closed her eyes and waited for the arrival that would lead them to the fleet. Naruto calmly closed his eyes and drifted off into meditation, contemplating his inner thoughts to himself. Well, this certainly has been an interesting day within the past few thousand years. I honestly didn't think my rescuers would take to me in such a friendly manner. I still gotta wonder if all of my relations in all those villages are still in affect. I mean, I know I did everything the Kyuubi said, and prepared for a future like this and all that. But I wonder how much of it really mattered. I mean, I know I agreed to have enact the CRA, and Kami knows how many people lined up at my door when they find out that I'm the last remaining member of the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, but man, that was nuts. Having all those royal clans trying to set me up with their daughters and such, wanting me to get on an early road making heirs. I guess Sasuke really didn't have it easy after all. Might have been why he went nuts, hey ha. But seriously, I can't believe I went through all that political bullshit just because Kurama said it would prove useful in a future where everyone we know might be dead. How exactly does it prove useful? How many girls did I have to get with in order to secure seats of power in the future? And what does it even matter now? All of them are dead, sure, but I can bring them back with the Geto Rinne Tensai technique. Though that itself would be a massive pain, considering such a use of chakra bringing back so many people I care for and love would drain an immense supply of chakra from my body. I mean, Nagato-san died from using that technique to bring back everyone who died during Akatsuki's assault on Konoha, and that alone ended up killing him due to how much chakra he had to exert. Even with all my chakra I have now, as well as Kurama's, performing such a grand-scaled technique would probably knock me out cold for at least a day or so, which may or not be a bit of a setback at the specific time when I perform it. I'm not even sure if the current Hai no Kuni would even recognize the lands I was supposed to jointly rule over anymore, given the fact that none of them probably even exist anymore. And then there's also the facts of getting them to recognize my own royal bloodline, seeing if they recognize the Clan Restoration Act, and getting them all to recognize each royal bloodline of each individual partner of mine. I knew Kurama said this was going to be difficult and I agreed to it, but damn does it look impossible now, especially when I'm face to face with a situation I honestly thought I'd never see. Especially when all of the ladies are brought back and getting them to all agree with one another again, recognize the situation we're in, and having them all manage to coexist with one another in the nations of today. I mean, goddamn. How many wives did I get before I died anyway? Not like I was able to enjoy much time with them individually or at all, considering that the entire world got destroyed and everyone I knew died, in which in the end I was ultimately powerless to do anything, not like I am now. Which is strange, despite how many of them there were. I got to know them all in such a short amount of time, and honestly, I think I still love them all too. Hinata was the first of them all, and of course, was the first one to confess her love to me. She put herself in between the diva path of pain for me, she risked it all to save me and nearly got killed as a result. All that time she had been watching me, admiring me, and just waiting for me to notice her, and I was too stupid and dense to see it. After everything she's gone through, with having to put up with Neji and Hanabi's abuse in the early years, as well as Hiyashi being a complete prick before I managed to make him see the light, she's gone through a lot. As for Tamari, she didn't just volunteer herself to be at my side. It was also encouraged by my local friend, the Godem Case Cage and fellow Jinchuriki, Sabaku no Gara. Ever since when Gara and I fought during Orochimaru's invasion of Konohagakure, a bond was formed in the process, and the next time we met, it would be as friends and equals. Gara, like me, had a pretty terrible life growing up. Everyone hated him and called him a monster, and from what I understand, his version of Iruka-sensei, a man named Yashimaru, ended up trying to kill him because he blamed him for the death of sister who was incidentally Gara's mother, Kurora. After his uncle and only true friend tried to kill him, Gara lost it for quite a while and became obsessed with killing people through his powers in joint combination with the Biju Shukaku. He devoted his life to destroying them all and living only for himself. He was a reflection of what I could have been if I had been consumed by hatred. Incidentally, he was also similar to how Sasuke went down a path of betrayal as well. But Gara saw the light when I tried to convince him how things weren't all bad. Sasuke refused to see that side of things. Even when he had won over the affection of Tsunagakure, he still wanted someone he truly trusted to be Temari's husband. I mean, she was his only sister. It would make sense he wanted someone he thought as a brother to take care of her. Tamari actually put her name forward on a list of candidates to be another wife of mine. I guess it was because of how she felt that I changed Gara's perspective on life, and I saved her brother from becoming another Sasuke early on. That, and after so many years passed after the incident at the Valley of the End, I had changed drastically in character and in figure. So I guess that helped push her in my direction as well. When Tamari requested permission to marry me from her brother, I heard Gara was only too happy to oblige. I was someone he trusted to be Temari's husband. I think the other one might have been Shikamaru. But that guy wasn't really the type to be married to a Hokage's sister and to have so many responsibilities to be tied to royalty and having to go through the political system of two separate countries. That also would have given me quite a seat of power in Suna as well, if everything hadn't gone to shit shortly after. Two women, one nearly twice my age and the other still significantly older, approached me at the same time to discuss marriage plans with me. Terumi Mei the Godem Mizukage and Ba-chan Tsunade herself. The Godem Hokage of my own village. At that point I only had one thought in my mind, what the actual fuck? According to Tsunade-chan, as I started to know her by shortly afterwards, a decision she had come to when deciding who I would marry when it came to royal clans eventually narrowed down to the Senju clan and the Terumi clan. Adding such strong blood to my own blood would create children who'd be capable of near miracles, and help revive the Namikaze Uzumaki clans that much faster. Tsunade said the reason she wanted to marry me was that I was the one who showed her the light that she had only previously seen in her old partner Dan. and that I rescued her from drowning in a pit of darkness that could have led to the restoration of the Hibitomi's arms, the same arms responsible for killing Oji-san. According to her, I was the person who taught her what it meant to be a Hokage, what it meant to believe in a cause that could protect people precious to her. Apparently, she also owed a favor to Ka-san. They were good friends once apparently, and she promised that if anything happened to her, Ka-san, that she would take care of her son when he was born. She lost sight after that promise after Dan's death, and apparently, was one of the many regrets she carried on her back. Tsunade-chan apparently felt awful that she wasn't there to be my foster mom throughout my life, so she decided to be the next best thing in her own thoughts, my wife, or in this case, one of my many wives. She told me that she'd help me bring back the Uzumaki Namikaze bloodlines, and that her Senju blood would run deep within the veins of the future I'd be providing the world. Maid-chan was interested in the Namikaze Uzumaki restoration program for a number of reasons, to put it lightly. I remember that she briefly knew To-san, and considered him quite attractive, and that she was actually going to make a move on him before he and Ka-san got together. She already considered me extraordinarily handsome in her own terms, telling me I was definitely my father's son and that definitely received all of the beneficial genes of the Namikaze bloodline. And since I had already defeated Pain, who was supposed to be invincible, months prior, she was also adamantly attracted to me because of my strength. And upon hearing the CRA imposed on me, she didn't quite leap at me like others did, but she was greatly interested in the prospect of it. As she had been looking for a husband for quite some time, I'm actually surprised she didn't have one sooner. And according to some rumors I heard shortly after Mei got involved with my CRA, I may have broken the heart of one of her bodyguards, Chojuro, one of the current members of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu. Which actually kind of frightened me at the time when the prospect of a big angry man wielding a huge sword would try to come for my head. Turns out though when I actually got to meet Chojuro he seemed kind of shy and kind and not really the hot-headed guy the first pictured. I blame Zabuza-san for that earlier image. He actually wished me luck on restoring my clans, and specifically asked me to take care of Maid-chan for him, a good guy that Chojuro. I had first questioned to Tsunade-chan that her appearance was sorely based on genjutsu, and that she was much older than she made herself out to be. Normally under any other circumstance, I would have been punched through the wall halfway across Konoha for a comment like that, but given what the incidents that were soon to transpire she held back from clobbering me. She said that after certain act was performed, other words, her genjutsu appearance would become her actual appearance, and a great amount of her youth could be restored in the process. Give or take 20 years, putting her in her 50s while her actual appearance would reassemble a woman in her mid-30s. That act was hammerin' her like bent nail? Oh for fuck's sake, why on Kami's green earth do you have to put the most delicate of situations in such a vulgar namesake? Because I don't like to beat around the bush and sugarcoat things like you do a lot, Kit. I don't sugarcoat anything, it's called having tact. It's called being hey, I remember that little experience quite well, and you guys weren't even officially married yet, you little rabble-rouser. Then again, not like you officially got to have any weddings anyway, considering how everything went to Kingdom Come in the end anyway. Still, gotta live in the moment. Man was that woman smooth. I mean like newborn full smooth. Gotta hand it to her even in her age, she was damn vibrant. Can you please stop talking about that way about Tsunade? I mean I knew for a long time as a Ba-chan who suddenly was to become my wife. And then in order for her that grand scheme of her to restore her youth would be to have your seminal fluids mix with hers while being coated with my chakra, allowing it to literally revitalize her body, restoring much of her youth in the process so she would actually look like her fake appearance rather than just having it be an illusion? Sounds like a lame deus ex machina to me, but hey, it got results, now didn't it? Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Knowing that I was actually looking at Tsunade-chan for what she really was and not a reflection of what she wanted, she was quite beautiful. And you do realize we'll probably have to do that exact situation again since she died, right? Untrue, she said once that ritual was performed that it only needed to be done once, and that if she was ever brought back from the grave, her appearance from the ritual would remain. Wow, you really are a fun sucker, you know that kid. Hey, I'm just telling you what she told me Kurama. How did she even learn about something like that anyway? She read from an old tome, no idea where she got it by the way, that if a male Jinchuriki engaged in intercourse with an older woman and coated his seminal fluids with the chakra of his biju, it could restore the youth of his older mate considerably. You do realize though she could have gotten pregnant, right? And that little part of the ritual won't exactly be intact when she comes back. Meaning you'd still have to knock her up once or thrice in order to get some heirs? Fuck. Hey, I win. Teme, anyway, moving on, I believe after that little ritual, Mei-chan got all worked up over watching us. Some exotic voyeur fetish of hers,